We'll discuss this and more of today's top headlines. I'm Celestia Sherman.
And I'm Ernie Manous. It's Election Day, and University of Houston political science professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus will be here with all the latest on the key races.
Plus, Houston Chronicle space reporter Andrea Leinfelder will join us to tell us about the updated plan for the Artemis III mission.
And as always, we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the purple box.
All this and more right here on Hello Houston, right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. and Israeli war against Iran, which directly or indirectly now involves nearly a dozen countries, is stretching into a fourth night, and the death toll is climbing. The Iranian Red Crescent reports more than 750 people have been killed in Iran. Israel is reporting at least 10 deaths on its soil. The U.S. confirms at least 6 American service members are dead. In the early hours of the war, the strikes killed Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and members of his family. NPR's Daniel Estrin is following developments from Tel Aviv.
What's happening in the Gulf is huge. Iran is pounding U.S. positions. The U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia was hit by drones, and Qatar says it shot down Iranian warplanes. That shows an expanded role for a Gulf Arab country, and we should be watching now to see whether other Arab countries being attacked by Iran will actively join the war.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reporting. NPR's Scott Horsley has been monitoring the war's impact on U.S. markets.
The average price of gasoline jumped 11 cents overnight, topping $3 a gallon for the first time in 3 months. Low gasoline prices had been a counterweight to inflation for most of the last year. But AAA says at $3.11 a gallon, gasoline's now slightly more expensive than it was a year ago. The war with Iran has not only pushed up global crude oil prices, but also caused a spike in the cost of natural gas. That could drive up already high heating and electricity bills. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow is down more than 700 points, or 1.4%. Colin Gray, the father of suspected Appalachia High School shooter Colt Gray, has been found guilty of second-degree murder and other charges for allegedly enabling his son's access to a firearm used in the September 2024 school shooting. Colt Gray faces separate charges for the killing of 2 students and 2 teachers at the school. This is only the second U.S. case in which a parent is held accountable for allegedly giving a child access to a gun used in a school shooting. In other news, Senate primaries in Texas and North Carolina are getting a lot of attention today. NPR's Ashley Lopez has details.
Democrats face long odds in regaining a majority in the U.S. Senate, but both North Carolina and Texas are states the party is eyeing as potential pickups later this fall. In Texas, Republican incumbent John Cornyn faces a challenge to his reelection from the state's often embattled Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico are vying for the Democratic nomination. In North Carolina, there are contests for an open seat currently held by Tom Tillis, who announced his resignation last year. The state's former governor, Democrat Ray Cooper, is the front runner for the Democratic ticket, and former RNC chair Michael Whatley is favored to win the Republican nomination. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
All major market indices are down 1.4%. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Today is primary election day in Texas. One of the races we'll be watching is the Democratic primary for the 18th Congressional District. News 88.7's Michael Adkison is following that race.
This is the third election for the 18th district since November, which had a special election and a runoff to fill the seat vacated by the late Congressman Sylvester Turner. But this race is different. It's one of the districts targeted by Texas Republicans during redistricting, pitting Democratic leaders against one another. Al Green, who currently represents the 9th district, and Christian Menifee, the victor of the special election, will face off, as will Department of Defense worker Gretchen Brown. I'm Michael Atkinson, News 88.7.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office is asking the Texas Supreme Court to end Harris County's Immigrant Legal Defense Fund. News 88.7's Sarah Gruno has more.
Both a district court and the state's 15th Court of Appeals have denied Paxton's arguments that the program violates the state's gift clause by giving public funds to private organizations. County Attorney Jonathan Fonbon told Houston Public Media that Paxton is now asking the Texas Supreme Court to force the appeals court to change their decision.
When you're paying for a legal service, right, where the county knows, we know where our money's going, we know how it's being spent. And really, like, what the AG disagrees with is not that we're providing money that incidentally happens to benefit private parties, is that they don't like that those private parties are people who are in deportation proceedings.
Harris County has until Friday to file a response in the matter to the Texas Supreme Court. I'm Sarah Gruno, News 88.7.
Houston law firm Sussman Godfrey is declaring victory after the Justice Department dropped an appeal defending one of President Trump's executive orders. Trump singled out several law firms that represented clients he did not like, attempting to strip away security clearances and deny access to federal buildings. Notably, Sussman Godfrey represented Dominion Voting in a lawsuit against Fox News. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, envisioning a future where learning sparks opportunity and thriving belongs to everyone. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Good morning, Houston, and happy Election Day.
So funny. You and I were chatting, and I didn't have my earpiece plugged in, so I couldn't hear the show. And I'm talking to you, and I'm like dissecting the election and what's going to happen. I was like, we're on.
I kept looking at you like, Ernie, we are 20 seconds. We're about to be on in 20 seconds.
Well, we are about to be on. Frank isn't with us today. He's got a bit of the cold that's going around.
It's going around. I had it last week.
You had
terrible.
it. He's got it. So far, I've avoided it, I think. Yeah. Let's see if I can.
Fingers crossed. It's definitely going around, so we hope everybody stays healthy.
But we do hope everybody also gets out and votes today. It is Election Day, as we have been mentioning and talking about. This is the day. We had just about 2 weeks of early voting, and now this is your final chance to let your voice be heard. And I hope that everyone that can gets out there and does vote. I don't really know, haven't heard a report on lines, how busy it is out there right now. If you've gone to vote, let us know. How busy is it at the polls for the primaries, early voting? It was crazy out there. There were lots of people voting, and that's a good thing.
And you can also go to harrisvotes.com and you can check out the lines there and find out exactly where you can, the closest voting center to you.
And also they have wait times there. I don't know exactly how accurate those are, but they do say.
They are pretty accurate, yeah.
They weren't when I went and voted.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Why?
It was a little longer, but actually it moved quickly. There's a lot on the ballots, too. So make sure you do your homework because there are a lot of races on there.
Right. And coming up on today on Hello Houston, we're going to be talking to Brandon Rottinghaus, and he's going to kind of break down to us why this primary election is so important and crucial, not just in Texas, but looking at it from a national standpoint.
We are getting an awful lot of national attention, especially for our Senate primaries, because that could change the whole balance of the U.S. Senate, or at least aid in changing it. My British computer guy, because he watches us over on YouTube. He's one of our HuTubers, so go over to YouTube and watch it. He said, it's a beautiful day to get out and vote. No matter which party you're voting with, your vote is your voice. Get out, vote, and be heard.
That's right.
And I think that's an important message for everyone to remember. And he also said he's looking forward to our coverage this evening. We're going to be live from 8 till 10 o'clock, talking with some of the candidates, checking on the races and the early information. Tanisha Hudspeth is going to be with us, county clerk, to tell us how voting went in our area today. So all that's coming up later on the show. Did you do anything fun last night?
No, not really.
Quiet night?
Yeah, quiet night. What about you?
We had a quiet night. We had what we call leftovers night. So we were going to have dinner, and a friend of mine, Jeff, came over, and we were making dinner with Mom. And so last night he had brought some sausages, bacon and cheddar sausages. We cut them in little medallions, and I had a big pretzel in the freezer. So we took that out to cook, and then we had it with a little like mustard. It was like a little German fest eating, and it was fine. It cleaned out our freezers.
Very good.
A good thing to do. But talking about cleaning out the area, how does the weather look today out there?
The weather is
it's a little overcast.
It's beautiful as I'm looking at right now, the live cam that we have.
A little overcast, I would say. But it's not raining, so get out and vote. Sorry about that. I mean, I went to you like you were Frank. Like, give me an in-depth report.
I was like,
on the weather.
I'm not really sure. Let's look outside. Okay, what does it look like outside? But we want to hear. What does it look like outside your window? 713-440-8870.
As frivolous and the frivolity we are exchanging here, unfortunately, the news of the world around us is not that much fun, but it is serious and important. So, Celeste, take us in.
Yes. Sorry about that. My computer went down. Okay. I've got it up now. I apologize. No President Trump said Monday the strikes in Iran are aimed at destroying Iran's missile capabilities and its navy, making sure it cannot obtain a nuclear weapon and preventing it from arming and funding terrorism across the globe. He offered no new details about the length or scope of the strikes that began over the weekend and that have so far resulted in the death of 4 American soldiers. And I believe we do have a clip that we're waiting for. And we're going to go right through that. And basically, the president said, we're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have from the beginning. We projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go for far longer than that. Trump reiterated that diplomatic attempts had failed repeatedly in the lead up to the strikes. We want to hear from you. Do you support the U.S. strikes in Iran? And how long should American involvement last if the conflict continues? Now is the time to join us right now on Hello Houston at 713-440-8870.
It's really interesting. We were talking about this yesterday on the show a little bit about the motivation and why we did what we did. And we have heard different explanations for it. I would assume that sometimes you have to have a little grace in a moment like this and realize it's probably compounded reasoning why we go into something like this, why we have the moment. The question that seems to be out there right now is why at this moment? Why was it important right now? Was there imminent harm about to happen? One explanation we've heard is the belief, and Marco Rubio, I believe, was saying this, that another country, and from what he said, I'm assuming he meant Israel, but I don't think he said it outright. Another country was about to strike, and that Iran would then retaliate by striking the U.S. And their belief was, if we let that happen, we are going to get hit hard. So we did a preemptive strike to limit that happening. That's what I gleaned from yesterday's conversations. Another interesting fact, though, is that peace talks were going on at the time.
Correct.
And that the ambassador or the person that was representing Iran had walked out of the meeting with the belief that a peace proposal looked possible on Friday afternoon. And so theoretically, they were caught off guard with what happened that night. So.
Right. And I think there's a lot of question around the strategy and policy around this, kind of what specific objectives should the U.S. have in Iran? We need clarification on what success looks like in measurable terms. And I think that is something that many Americans want to understand, because it's one of those things where things have escalated very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have that clip now that you were alluding to, and you did do a good representation of what the president said, but here we can give it a listen.
We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always. And we have, right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
Very, in some ways, almost a chilling comment there. Mm-hmm. I think we've fallen into a belief system, and even with this administration, it's a quick in and quick out. They do what they're going to do and they get back out again. And so hearing him talk about that, also he made the comment about, you can expect American casualties, and we've already seen some of that. We really have to pay attention. This is a major global conflict going on.
Oh,
right
absolutely. And we're already seeing it. The conflict has already triggered broader responses in the region, and it's going to just, as we watch, continue to escalate. But again, we want to hear from you. 713-440-8870. We do have a call from Sean from Kingwood. Sean is actually calling about Election Day. So let's chat with Sean about Election Day. Sean, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hey, guys. How are y'all doing today?
Pretty good. What's on your mind?
Well, I was starting to think about the way our primaries work and the respect to runoff elections, and I thought it would be a good opportunity for the implementation of ranked choice voting in the primaries, mainly to reduce the excessive cost, time, and, additional, say, annoying mailers in my mailbox related to the elections if we would implement it.
Sean, let me stop you right there for a second. For a lot of folks who don't understand ranked choice voting, can you explain that a little bit?
To my understanding with ranked choice voting is when you go in, you've got your, say, 3 or 4 primary candidates, and you rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. And thus, if your first person loses, your second person becomes your vote. And I think this is in places like Maine and a few other states that have it. And I don't know. To me, it just seems to be an efficient means so that we don't have the added expense of additional primary elections. I think we've heard about how much it's going to cost the different campaigns to do it. And then as well, it's just the state and how much it costs to run these elections.
Yeah, I do believe we'll be talking with Brandon in the next segment just about how much has gone into the Senate race. Celeste was talking about that earlier. And so we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in that in a minute. But yeah, it seems like in our area since November, we've been constantly voting. We had a November, we had a December runoff, we had a January, we had a
special
February,
election.
and now we're in March. I make a joke around the office that every day on my way to work, I swing by the polls just to see if I have something to vote for.
Yeah, for sure. But
No, it's a good comment, Sean. A lot of people are looking at it and thinking about it, and so I appreciate that. It'd be interesting to see if it ever took hold. Celeste, what do you think? Would you like ranked choice voting?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I haven't really thought about it in that regard, but sure.
You know where I've heard it talked about, which I think is so funny? In the Oscars, they have ranked choice voting for Best Picture. And so the Oscars can do it, but then you have to wonder, does the Best Picture always win at the Oscars? Would the best person win if you did ranked choice? Interesting way to look at it. To go back to talking about what you were talking about us and Iran and what was going on there, Braden writes on YouTube, Iran doesn't have weapons that can reach the U.S. The idea of the U.S. being in danger of an Iranian strike is laughable at best. Braden, I do believe part of their concern is U.S. assets overseas. They go after embassies, they go after military bases, they go after, they struck a very popular tourist and business hotel in another country. So it's not necessarily when they talk about American casualties, it's not just what would happen here in our borders, but they talk about what could happen to Americans overseas and not to ignore the fact of military who are in these conflicts and often handle the brunt of these kind of attacks. So.
And again, 713-440-8870. Let's go to James from Cyprus. James, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question?
Hi, yes. I'm going to try to get it all in, but I'm a man of God, and I'm seeing what our president is doing with Israel and getting us into this war, and it concerns me. And my concern is this. When Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton gave their testimonies, that opened up the door for Melania Trump to be given testimony for the Epstein files. And I noticed that as soon as that became available to the public, that Hillary and Bill were kind of pretty much hands clean on this situation, we entered into this war. Now, I see Melania giving something at the UN, and she's a very, very articulate woman, and she has been identified in photos with Mr. Epstein. Now, my concern is this. Has Donald Trump done this maneuver to distract us or avoid possibly Melania Trump being called to testify? Because, I mean, if you look at what we just did, I mean, Marco Rubio said that we took a step on what Israel might do. So Israel twisted our arm to attack.
James, I hear your concerns, and I know that what you're voicing is not solely your opinion. I've heard it from other sources and concerns. I think a lot of times when things happen with this administration, often it looks as though here's something happening here, here's a shiny thing over there, look over here instead of looking here. And so that bait and switch mentality has followed the Trump administration for his first and now this term. So I can understand your concern with that. But a lot of what is speculation at this point, and unfortunately we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I appreciate those thoughts and no, you're not alone in those beliefs. Let's go on to were you about to say something, Celeste?
No, I was just going to say 713-440-8870. Do you support the U.S. strikes in Iran, and how long should American involvement last if the conflict continues? Let's go to Jed from Northeast Houston. Jed, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Yes,
Jed,
ma'am.
what's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I was born in Palestine a couple of years before Israel came and occupied it. And they came from all over the world. They don't even recognize the DNA testing because there is no ethnicity in them. Anyway, then in the mid-90s, I came to the U.S. I got married with the love of my life, 31 years. And I became a U.S. citizen a long time ago, and I'm proud to be in the land of the brave and home of the free, or vice versa. Unfortunately, I discovered years ago that this country is occupied by the same occupiers of Palestine. This country being manipulated, and they won't leave it until they devastate it. And God save America, and God save the beautiful people of America.
Jed, thank you for your comments, and congratulations on finding the love of your life. I definitely take that from your comments, and to be a proud immigrant here in this country and becoming an American citizen. So thank you for that comment. The play, the connection, the diplomacy between the U.S. and Israel, I think we're going to learn a lot about the relationship and the redefining of that relationship as we go through this experience right now with Iran and the connection we have. They are countries that often our country and Israel work very closely together in security. And it's like who wagged the tail that wags the dog. What's that expression? You know, what comes first? So interesting to watch, and we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you for calling, Jed.
And let's go to Mike from Kemah. Mike, welcome to Hello Houston. What's your question or thoughts on the situation, the U.S. strikes in Iran?
Well, thanks for having me. Iran was not an imminent threat to the United States. The imminent threat to the administration was the vote that Congress is going to take this week to limit their powers to attack Iran without congressional approval, which is part of the Constitution and the War Powers Act. So that was the imminent danger, was that if he waited till this week, he wouldn't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting, the timing on all this, and we're going to learn more. Mike, so were you in favor of the strikes against Iran or no?
No.
Okay.
You don't negotiate for 3 days and then say, "Oh, we can't negotiate anymore. They're not moving." That's ridiculous, ludicrous, really. You know,
Mike,
how long does it take to negotiate a deal? 3 days? No.
Right, and I think there is a lot of question around the diplomacy and alternatives.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is Iran's not a good actor, but I don't think that we should be putting all our blood and treasure into something that is ill-defined, and they're not going to reach the objective. The people in Iran are very religious. They'll fight to the death, and then they'll fight some more. They'll live in tents in order to support their religion. You're not going to change their mind. And that's what Trump wants. He wants them to change their mind. So, and their religion is very deep. So,
Mike, thank you for your
his objective of regime change is virtually impossible.
Yeah. Mike, thank you for your comments and your thoughts. And I think that's part of the problem is understanding the clear objective for going in there and understanding also the people that you're dealing with. A friend of mine in college, her goal was she wanted to study other cultures so that she could work with our diplomats in understanding the culture of other people. I think it's too easy for us to put our belief systems, our value systems on other people and not understand each group, each organization. You come up in different ways and have different belief systems, and we can't assume that everyone sees things the same way we do. And so in a situation like this, when you fear a certain outcome or you're worried about something, that may not be their concerns and their worry. But it'll be interesting to see what plays out, and I wish, no matter what happens there, that it is quick, that it resolves itself quickly with the least loss of lives we can possibly have. Even at this point, there's been too many, and we can move forward.
Coming up on Hello Houston, it's Election Day for the 2026 primary election, and University of Houston political science professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus will help us break down all the key races. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Metro.org/fare system.
Hilary Duff found fame on screen and in the studio as a teenager. Now she's stepping back into the spotlight as an adult with a new album.
I felt finally ready to stop comparing myself to my old successes and really just being like, whatever this is going to be, it's going to be, but I need to do it.
I'm Juana Summers. How being a wife and mother changed Duff's process on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon here on News 88.7.
These days, social media can create the illusion of connection, but don't be fooled.
Social media, it's not a meaningful part of our social diet. Like I said, it's like junk food. And again, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that it's just not good for us.
Why we need to fight the urge to socialize less and tips for how to make a great first impression. That's next time on Think.
Think tonight at 11 o'clock on News 88.7.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Today, as we've mentioned, marks primary election day, and by tonight, hopefully, we'll know which candidates survive in several key county, state, and national races. To help us make sense of what's coming next, we're joined by Brandon Rottinghaus, professor of political science at the University of Houston and co-host of Party Politics. Brandon, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Ernie.
I'm assuming
people wait for March Madness in basketball, but this is my March Madness
is your
right
go
here.
time.
I was going to ask if you got a lot of rest, because I think you're going to have a long night ahead of you tonight.
It's going to be a long night, but an exciting night because there's a lot going on.
And that's where I was, curious from your perspective, Brandon. Does this feel like a change election or more of a status quo primary, typical, straightforward type election?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the fact that you're seeing so many people vote in these primaries means that there's definitely something afoot. You've got a sea change in the Democratic side. The turnout is up over 100% of where things were in 2022. And you're seeing a lot of energy from this in Texas, outside Texas. It's become a national race. So there's no question there's a lot going on. The other thing on the Republican side is that you're getting a lot of attention there because this is a moment of potential change for the Republican Party. John Cornyn is the last establishment figure, and if he loses, then it is definitely a kind of nail in the coffin scenario for the Republican establishment in the GOP.
Talking about that particular race, looking at it, do we see Hunt as a spoiler, or is he a viable candidate at this point?
I think in the context of the push to a runoff, it's probably the case that he's a spoiler. I think his upside is really high. A lot of people liked that he produced a kind of fresh vision. He's close to Donald Trump. He's got a lot of energy. He's a good campaigner. But obviously, given the dynamics of this race, a lot of the kind of insurgent focus from the Republicans has been on Ken Paxton. They just love his attitude. They love his approach to the office. He's not necessarily spending a lot of money because he understands he's probably a lock for the runoff. John Cornyn has tried to close the door on Wesley Hunt because he knows that effectively that if this is a two-person race, then he's going to be the one who's fighting for his life. And I think for that reason, Hunt is considered a bit of a spoiler. But that is a common scenario we see in Republican politics. You've got a couple of insurgent figures who want to push the conservative envelope. They want to get an incumbent into a runoff, and then they can really feast on that.
You mentioned Wesley Hunt and his connection with Trump. Trump was recently here on Friday, didn't come right out and endorse anybody. But if you're watching the ads on television, which if you're watching television, you can't escape them, it's Trump image all over the place. So for folks on the left who feel like that Trump doesn't have a hold anymore, obviously the right is moving toward him and they're still seeing this as a good thing. Is this good, bad, or not?
This is, I think, a great point because it's hard for most voters to see kind of who's officially the Trump endorsed candidate. Like, if you didn't catch it, you wouldn't probably know it in these ads. Everyone's talking about Trump, and there's always pictures of them together with a thumbs up. So it's hard for a lot of voters to kind of distinguish. But the fact that the president didn't endorse in this race, I think is pretty telling. That this is a close race, and he doesn't want to weigh in because I think they're not sure what the outcome's going to be. And they like to be strategic on this. Trump's endorsement is still the big brass ring. Every candidate wants it. It does separate a lot of unknown candidates from the field. You're seeing this in a lot of down ballot races. But in a race like this, where all of the candidates have some association to Trump, it's unlikely that his imagery is going to make a big difference. Voters have pretty much known these candidates for a long time. So I think they pretty much understand where they think that these candidates stand vis-a-vis Trump.
But it's interesting, though, when we look at party dynamics, Brandon, not all of President Trump's endorsements have been in alignment with Governor Abbott. So can you talk to us about those type party dynamics that we're seeing and how that kind of plays out on a local level?
Yeah, we're not used to seeing much daylight between President Trump and Greg Abbott, Celeste. We typically see them pretty aligned. You see some modest differences here, and that might be pretty interesting. For one example, you've got Congressional District 9 here. Alex Mueller got the Trump endorsement. Briscoe Cain, who's been in the legislature for a long time and actually carried a lot of the bills that Donald Trump had asked with respect to redistricting, got the Abbott endorsement. So there are some modest differences here. I don't think that's playing out in a way that's used for these candidates to be a kind of prime for the other. I think that they're, happy with the support they've got. The Trump endorsement for a federal race and for a candidate like Alex Mueller is probably the bump that she needs to push her over, because with that race, there's sort of a lot of unknowns and it's a new district. So people are looking for a kind of shortcut to make that choice. And the fact that they've got these two candidates who are running, who've got these different endorsements, might be meaningful, but I wouldn't read too much politically into it. I don't think that this means that there's some major split. The only split that we sort of see is that Greg Abbott, although giving the federal government a lot of the information about the voter registration records in Texas, did say that he didn't think that the Texas voting process should be federalized. So there are some modest differences there, but it's unclear if the White House is really going to push that or not.
And how much do you think federal issues kind of overshadow kind of county level concerns when we're looking at primaries at a state level?
The most interesting thing to me about Texas politics in the last decade has been the nationalization of the politics. So we're definitely seeing a lot of those national issues seep into local politics. They're talking about, issues that may not be relevant to what they do day to day. You're seeing discussions about deportation. You're seeing questions on abortion. These aren't issues that most different levels of government deal with.
I have to say, just the messaging alone in some of the campaign commercials that I've seen, for example, one of the ones that I have been watching closely is the commissioner for Texas Agriculture, the Texas Agriculture Commissioner. And they were talking about things that I was like, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with what your actual jurisdiction controls and does in policy.
That's so true. Yeah, a lot of this is just virtue signaling. It's a way for candidates to try to prime voters who may not be aware of what the ag commissioner does. It's an extremely important position, and tens of billions of dollars are on the line in terms of the state's economic agricultural function. But it isn't something that most voters are that attentive to, and it's hard to really excite a base. And think about it this way: most base voters, most primary voters, are cued to these very extreme messages. These are the most committed conservatives, the most committed liberals, so they're used to hearing these kinds of arguments. So a nationalization of the politics of it and a kind of extremism in talking about them is pretty much the natural course for these primary talks.
You know, oftentimes what we talk about in primaries, at least on the national level, is they go far, like you were just saying, far to their base. But then when they get through the primary, then they try and moderate a little bit to bring in the other party too, if they can. In a state like Texas, the way it currently stands, and granted, this could all be changing this time because it looks like there's a strong Democratic turnout for this race. Does it matter in the state of Texas? Can they run as far right as possible in the primaries and still keep that stance moving into the general?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ernie. I think you'll see a bit of a code switch when it comes to the issues they talk about. You can't erase your record. You have to live with that. And certainly the opponents would bring those kinds of things up. But I do think you'll see a bit of a shift in focus, right? Instead of talking about the kind of base priming issues that are often social, for the Republicans, and especially for the Republicans, you'll see that change a little bit and have them shift to talk about the kind of progress that they've made. So John Cornyn has got some bipartisan things he can point to in terms of gun control. You've got Ken Paxton, who is, as AG in charge of things like collecting child support payments. And so there are a lot of things that they can point to that are kind of bipartisan or that might be appealing to moderates or independents that are, potentially kind of in their grouping for voters. It's the same for the Democrats too. They can point to things that aren't just about priming the base. And I think you'll see some of that come down. And the better kind of candidate and the more electable candidate has more of these kind of tools to be able to press.
And just to remind everyone who's not following exactly, so for the primary race, you've got to get 50% plus one vote to actually get the nomination. And so with a lot of these high-profile races that even have a very far behind third, that could be enough to shift this. So we would have to then have 6 more weeks. It's like Groundhog. If they see their shadows on primary night, we got 6 more weeks of election going on. To remind folks, do you think over on the Democratic side, we are going to see a clear winner, at least in the the U.S. Senate race for Texas? Do you think we'll have a clear winner tonight, or do you think we're headed for a runoff there?
Yeah, I liked your groundhog analogy. The analogy about this being March Madness is pretty apt too, because March Madness goes on for all of March and sometimes into April. So the fact that this is going to go to a runoff in a lot of these races is definitely something that voters have to be aware of. Yeah, some of these races are definitely going to move to a runoff. For sure, the Republican side will. The fact that you've got 3 pretty competitive prime candidates, I think, will push that. For the Democrats, I think you'll probably see that end tonight or maybe tomorrow morning, depending on how the count goes. The count's a little bit slower. The process, especially in Harris County, has been a little sluggish. We're seeing some counties in Texas that have to hand count ballots or choosing to hand count ballots, so that can take a little bit of time too. So we'll probably know most of what the outcomes are by late tonight and early tomorrow morning.
But I want to go back really quickly to what we were speaking of when we were talking about shift of focus regarding messaging from candidates. Brandon, are we seeing any demographic shifts in voting patterns locally?
Yeah, you're certainly seeing a lot more young people vote. Is especially true in the Democratic primary. It's still the case that the average age is above 50, but the Republicans' average age is above 60. So you're seeing the younger Democrats vote in bigger numbers. That basically reflects the fact that you're seeing the county change over the past 10 years or so. You're also seeing a lot more Latinos come vote, and that's something that Democrats need to have to be able to be successful. Typically, they're getting about 2/3 of that vote, but in 2024, that number shrank to just over 50%. Those numbers have to change dramatically if the Democrats are going to be effective, not just in Harris County, but basically all over. The fact that the Latino vote is the biggest swing vote in the state means that they have to be courted, they have to be talked to, those messages have to land with them. Candidates are doing this in different ways, but if that doesn't work, then there's simply no way a candidate can be successful.
I saw one analyst on national coverage, of course, covering our Texas Senate race, talking about the Talarico Crockett race, and they were saying Crockett will more than likely carry Dallas, Talarico will more than likely carry Austin, that what we should be watching is Houston, and where Houston goes may be what ends up happening. From your point of view, does that sound right?
I think there's some truth in that. It's definitely the case that Harris County is big and it's got a lot of different coalition partners Democrats are hopeful to lean on. You've also got a supersized number of different groups that are supporting the different candidates. So Talarico does better with white liberals who are a little older. Jasmine Crockett does better with African-American voters. You've got obviously a huge range of these kinds of voters. So the question really is about the dynamics of turnout, who's really coming out to vote. And that is a question about how well the campaigns are doing that. You're, I think, exactly right, Celeste, to talk about the kind of campaign frequency and just the freneticness of it. One of your callers mentioned the fact that they're getting inundated with ads. Ernie, you talked about the TV obviously being nonstop ads. This is something that, depending, on kind of the candidate's success and their messaging prowess, they're able to get these different candidates out. I think what I'm really watching are two things. I'm watching the Valley because this is where a lot of the Latino vote is. And like I said, they tend to break, for Democrats, but which Democrat they break for will be pretty telling here. I'm also looking at suburban counties, places like Hayes County that are outside of Austin. It's big, it's growing. You've got a lot of retirees who have come to Texas and they vote in big numbers. I'm also looking at Collin County, which is where my hometown is. And this is a huge growing county full of young people, but you've also got a good mix in terms of economics. So that's another county I think that will be a bellwether.
But Brandon, Ernie kind of, y'all talked a little bit about this and I want to dig deeper into it. For candidates who actually will survive tonight, what's going to be their biggest challenge next? Is it going to be pivoting to the middle? Is it going to be raising money? Is it going to be uniting the party? What type of challenges are going to be coming forward for those candidates that move on?
Yeah, Celeste, I think that the last two you mentioned are the most important. Number one, money is key. This Senate race has already been the most expensive primary in history, topping out at $122 million. That's incredible. I suspect we're going to see very similar eye-popping numbers for the general. So the candidates have got to make sure they've got hay in the barn. They've got to have that war chest renewed. That's job one. The other is just bringing the party back together. For the Republicans, that's going to be really hard. Like I said, they're probably going to have a runoff, so we're going to see that wound open for a little bit longer. For the Democrats, they've got to be able to pull this back together. There's a long history in the Texas Democratic Party of these divides, drawing on kind of the complications of this fracture. So it's often about coalitions, sometimes about race, it's about age, and often about ideology. So they've got to find a way to pull that back together. Whichever candidate wins, that's going to be job one.
What do you think is going to be one of the main factors when you look at ideology versus personality moving forward?
That's a great question. I think that, ideology is really baked in. Yeah. This is a very partisan environment. And like Ernie asked, Texas is really a place where you're seeing those divides pretty prominent. It's hard for the campaigns to move back to the middle. We'll see them try a little bit because they're looking to kind of court some of those independent voters. They tend to lean Republican, they tend to lean conservative, but they will shift. Also, the Latino vote is a key swing factor. So if you can convince those folks that you've got a better track, then I think that, you can find a path. But personality is going to matter a lot here. I think you've got a lot of bold personalities in this race, and obviously they have their own status. They've got their own approach that is appealing to a core of voters, and they've got to find a rhythm that works. So I think pitching that message carefully is going to be the thing that they're going to have to think about and make sure that they've got a good plan going forward.
Let's move closer to home. We had redistricting, and our area was hit really hard with the redistricting approach. So what do you see happening here? What's going on in the 29th? What's going to happen? There's some seats that could be lost. There are some voices we have seen on the national stage for a while. Al Green, who might not be the nominee. What are you seeing going on? And do you think the electorate understands the shift that's happened under their feet?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ernie. I think that the electorate is still kind of woozy from all these changes. I don't blame them. As you said, there's been so many different elections happening. It's hard to keep track. I think that demographic change is really important for a lot of these districts. You certainly saw the change in the 29th district, which is Sylvia Garcia's district. She has a primary challenge from Jarvis Johnson. That could be a close race, although I think that she'll probably emerge ahead just because name ID is on her side. In the 18th district, you've got basically half of those those folks who are brand new. The geography of this matters a lot. Those folks are people now who are essentially in a new district, and they're willing to give Christian Menefee, who's the current member in that seat, temporarily so, but current member in that seat, to give a chance. So that, again, I think underscores the fact that the geography here matters. The other is that you're seeing a tremendous amount of change with respect to generation. You've got challengers all over. You've got new candidates in Congressional District 9, both of whom are fairly new to politics. They've held some elected offices before. Alex Mueller has been on Metro Board, and Briscoe Cain has been in the legislature, the Texas State Legislature. So they're not new faces, but they're kind of new to national politics. So you're seeing a lot of churn here in Houston. I think that reflects the fact that this is a new day, and it's really a moment that you're seeing the kind of generational focus shift in a place like Houston that for so long it had the kind of same personalities and same figures.
We have folks commenting about how many races are on the ballot. A lot of it is judges. With all of it going on, which races are you paying the most attention to tonight?
My two races I'm looking at are the primaries for county judge here in Harris County. Lena Hidalgo, who's been in office for 2 terms, kind of leaves in a bit of a blaze of glory. Her impact, I think, has been pretty profound, not just on the politics of Harris County, but also the policy. So the fight, in some sense, in the Democratic side, where you've got former Mayor Anise Parker and former Councilwoman Leticia Plummer running, could be really interesting. That, to some degree, is also a question about kind of generational change. On the Republican side, you've got a similar race. You've got Marty Langton, who is the former head of the firefighters union, and he's facing off against former Treasurer Orlando Sanchez. They've both got pretty keen ideas about what they'd like to see happen, both political players, movers and shakers in Houston. So I think that would be a really interesting race. Harris County is obviously a bellwether in lots of ways for national politics, and it's been a pretty purple county. There's a kind of tale in Texas that all these urban areas are just blue, but they're really not. There's a huge mix, and a place like Harris obviously is massive. So you've got a tremendous kind of range of different ideological interests, but Harris County really is pretty purple. And when you kind of break it down, it'll be interesting to see kind of who each party wants representing them, and then how that functions in the general in terms of competition.
Wow.
Brandon Rottinghaus is a professor of political science at the University of Houston and a host of Party Politics. Brandon, it's always great to have you. Thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
You too. Thanks both.
Thanks.
Tonight, starting at 8 p.m., we will have live election coverage and updates with Ernie Manous, Andrew Snyder, and the full News 88.7 election team. So tune in and keep informed. Coming up, changes to the Artemis mission. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Tonight on Houston.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
Delivering access to international markets for everything made and grown in Texas. Port Houston operates the public port terminals and advocates for Houston's port and ship channel, all for the benefit of those who live and work in the region.
Today is Election Day. I'm Ernie Manous. Join me along with politics and government reporter Andrew Snyder for live special coverage with results from local and statewide primary elections. We'll keep you updated on the highly contested Texas Senate race between Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, as well as local contests like the battle for the District 18 congressional seat and more. Join us for results and analysis after the polls close. Special coverage begins tonight at 8 p.m. on News 88.7 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
For months, the Department of Homeland Security has been plagued by allegations of chaos. Meanwhile, the funding fight over DHS and a partial government shutdown continues. Now, U.S. and Israeli airstrikes in Iran over the weekend are adding pressure to reach a funding agreement for the agency amid national security concerns. What's happening at DHS? We check in next time on 1A.
1A starts at 2 o'clock this afternoon here on News 88.7.
You want to buy or sell a home, how and where it is listed really matter.
This fight for listings is really at the heart of the real estate market, and it could determine, what kind of market do we have?
I'm Kai Risdal, Zillow, Compass Realty, and Homes for Sale. That is next time on Marketplace.
Marketplace comes your way at 6:30 tonight after All Things Considered here on News 88.7.
back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Last Friday, NASA announced that its Artemis III mission will not be landing on the moon as originally intended. The mission, which would have been the first manned lunar landing since 1972, will instead be designed to test out systems and operational capabilities in low Earth orbit in preparation for an Artemis IV lunar landing in 2028, with the Artemis III now expected to launch in 2027. To give us the latest on the updated plan for the Artemis III mission, we're joined by Houston Chronicle space reporter Andrea Leinfelder. Andrea, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, exactly what changed, and why is NASA no longer planning for Artemis III to land on the moon?
Yeah, so Artemis III was supposed to land on the moon in 2028, and now it's going to go to low Earth orbit. And instead of going to the moon, it's going to dock with the human landing system. So these are the spacecraft being developed by SpaceX and Blue Origin to transfer astronauts from the NASA spacecraft to the moon. And so the idea is to really test these systems closer to home, make sure these human landing systems are working. They're also going to test the spacesuits closer to home. But new NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman also wants to really just launch rockets more often. The Space Launch System rocket is a very big, very complex rocket, and it's been more than 3 years since the last time it was launched. And so a lot of issues are popping up, issues that happened with the first launch. And the workforce, you lose that muscle memory. You don't really ever get confident, familiar if you don't launch rockets a lot. And so the idea behind this is one, do some more tests, buy down some more risk before we do that landing mission. And then two, just really to increase the cadence of launches at NASA.
Right. So then I have to ask, so is this a significant shift? Are they looking at this like a delay, a downgrade, or just simply a strategic reset?
I would put it more in the strategic reset. The main question, though, is, Artemis III was going to land on the moon in 2028, and now Artemis IV is going to land on the moon in 2028. So the timeline, in theory, has not shifted. The question really is, can NASA build and launch rockets that quick? So if NASA can build and launch rockets this quick, which it did during the Apollo program, which was obviously a very different set of circumstances and budgets, but if NASA can build and launch rockets this quick, then this is adding missions, and it shouldn't delay the landing timeline. It's just giving more practice and more rocket launches under their belt.
You say all of this, but I wonder, to the casual observer hearing of this delay, does it decrease belief in the system and what we're doing right now, in the competency of what's going on? Or do you feel people are looking at this thinking it's one more pseudo-government boondoggle where they say they're going to do something and they can't get it together?
I don't think the general public has a good grasp on what's happening. I also think a lot of people don't know NASA's returning people to the moon. It's not as big of a deal as the Apollo mission. It's not on every TV like it was then. There's so much news these days. So A, I don't think a lot of people know NASA is returning astronauts to the moon. And B, I think people hear this and they just think that there's a delay. I don't think they understand what's trying to be accomplished. But at the same time, we do have to see that NASA can build and launch these rockets at the speed that it's saying it can. And so that's something we'll have to definitely be following.
Right. Are there any type of, budget implications to this? What type of reaction are you seeing coming from members of Congress that basically oversee the funding of these type projects?
Yeah, that's not an area I've been following too closely since the announcement on Friday, so I can't really talk to that much. But I know Congress has mandated that, NASA continue using the SLS rocket through at least Artemis V. So there's definitely momentum to keep using this rocket, but I can't really say if the funding is sufficient at the moment.
Yeah. How about for local stakeholders that are involved in this? What's their reaction to the delay there? And I'm curious what the discussion may be among astroscientists, whatever the correct terminology is, for people who really study this. What are they taking from all of this?
I think there's excitement to see the rocket launch more often. I think there's excitement to, still land on the moon in 2028 and have these additional steps. It's going to continue building industry because the landers are being built by SpaceX and Blue Origin. The spacesuits are being built by Axiom Space, which is here in Houston. So, there's a lot of excitement around building this economy in low Earth orbit and having NASA help them do that. And so this mission should help ensure that all of these systems are successful. And, I think everyone would like to see this rocket launch more often. It's a very impressive rocket to see launch. But it's just, everyone's just waiting to see if it can be pulled off.
When you talk about being pulled off and everybody's waiting to see it, is this making kind of waves on the international standpoint in that, are we in competition trying to be the first to be back launching as recurring rocket ships as we can?
Yeah, there's a current race right now with China to see who can get people to the moon first. It's kind of a second space race because whoever gets to the moon first and whoever, starts to create a sustainable presence first will set the rules and norms for operating there. And so there is definitely this especially vocal perspective from Congress that, America needs to beat China, and China is progressing pretty quickly. And so I think there's two trains of thought on this, right? Like, launching more often will get America back to the moon first, if they can launch more often. But, if you just keep adding missions and pushing back the moon landing, what will that do? So, I think there's just those two timelines there. But there's definitely this race of China right now that everyone is watching and everyone is eager to see.
And from an astronaut perspective, I have to ask, does this affect the crew? And what type of effect does this have on that team?
So one thing they said at the news conference on Friday is the Artemis II crew, they are going to go around the moon. They were never going to land. They're supposed to launch maybe as soon as April. That mission keeps getting delayed. But for them, they want to make sure their mission matters. They want to make sure that they're buying down risk so NASA can return humans to the moon. And so NASA, officials who spoke on Friday were saying this new plan forward is the best way to ensure that success, right? We're not just jumping from a mission that's going to orbit the moon to a mission that's going to land on the moon. We're taking those steps to advance. Now, they have not announced who's going to be on the Artemis III mission yet, which is probably for the best because it would be kind of a bummer to be like, you're going to be on Artemis III, which lands on the moon, and then just kidding, you're going to low Earth orbit. So they have not announced those astronauts yet. So we'll wait to see who gets that gig.
Was it wrong of them to announce the plans of what they were planning to do with Artemis III and then have to scale it back? Would it have was there a point where there could have been prudence in when these announcements came out so that they aren't in the position of altering a plan on the public stage, which I feel like may have been better served if they'd altered it in the conference rooms before we got to this point?
Well, this plan has been years in the works and has been delayed many times already. I believe it was initially supposed to land on the moon in 2024, then 2025, then it just kept getting kicked back. So at this point, they would have had to think to add this mission during Trump's first administration when the Artemis program was created. It's just been a lot of different administrations and policies since then. So it would have been difficult to have that level of foresight, I think.
On the flip side of all of this, should we be looking at this as very good, very wise, very smart decision? If you don't have all your bells and whistles in a row, you should wait because human lives are at risk. This entire program could be at risk. So it's really a good thing that they're having this much insight to say, you know what, it makes more sense for us to pause instead of pushing ahead.
NASA is always very vocal about no matter which architecture they would take, they are not launching until they're ready to go. They're not launching until they can ensure that it is safe for their astronauts. And so I think this was just two different perspectives. One was that we do a lot of testing on the ground and we won't need as many launch tests. But I think NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, who just entered in December, he is very much on the, practice and launch quickly, build that rhythm, like real world experience type of momentum. And so, it's definitely good to have lots of practices and to make sure that it's safe. But I feel like either path, NASA just would not have launched until it was as confident as it could be that the astronauts would be safe.
Andrea Leinfelder is the space reporter for the Houston Chronicle. Andrea, thanks so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we'll continue discussing today's top headlines. We'll also discuss the Trump administration's proposed cuts to federal transit funding. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
On the next Houston Matters, full election results and analysis. We'll check in with politics reporter Andrew Schneider. Then we'll discuss the results with Rice University's Mark Jones and the University of Houston's Renee Cross. Join us Wednesday morning at 9 on News 88.7.
Weather-wise, a slight chance of showers today, the high of around 82 this afternoon. Lows tonight around 68 with increasing clouds. Tomorrow, high around 81 with patchy fog, then a slight chance of showers. For the latest election news, visit our website, houstonpublicmedia.org. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7. It's a service of the University of Houston. More of Hello Houston is just ahead here on News 88.7.
President Trump has endorsed over 130 candidates in the Texas primaries and noticeably not endorsed others. We'll discuss what impact this will have on today's election. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. We'll also talk with Emmett Hopkins, Transportation Policy Manager at the Climate and Community Institute, who will discuss a new transportation proposal which would scale back federal funding.
Plus, we'll also learn about the Houston-based social service organization Alexander JFS and what impact SNAP cuts are having on their work.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. American citizens are being advised to avoid the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia's capital after the compound came under attack today. The Saudi Foreign Ministry says Iranian drones attacked the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. There were no immediate reports of injuries. The U.S. Embassy in Kuwait was attacked yesterday. Since the Israeli-U.S. war in Iran began Saturday, the Islamic Republic has been targeting U.S. interests in Gulf states that are normally considered safe. Markets have been experiencing a sharp sell-off as oil prices surge. President Trump predicted moments ago that won't last.
If we have a little high oil prices for a little while, but as soon as this ends, those prices are going to drop, I believe, lower than even before.
He said the war could last 4 to 5 weeks or longer. Trump is hosting German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who says Berlin wants to work on a strategy for when the current Iranian government no longer exists. Well, recent polls suggest the majority of Americans disapprove of the Iran war. Outside Washington, some rank-and-file Democrats and Republicans are taking different sides on the war. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is in a competitive congressional district. Here's NPR's Frank Langfitt.
Tom Fink is a Democrat who served on a nearby borough council. The U.S. attack shocked him.
I was horrified. It just reminds me of Iraq and things that have happened before. And you wonder, where is Congress?
Patrick Basim has a different take. He's running for the York County Republican Committee and says he's glad to see President Trump trying to remove any potential nuclear threat.
I think it's a great day for the Iranian people. They should feel liberated. I feel liberated as an American not having to deal with that thought in my head.
Basim said he hopes Iranians can overthrow the regime and hold free elections. Frank Langfitt, NPR News, Harrisburg.
It's election day in a handful of states. These are the first major primary contests for the 2026 midterms, including in North Carolina and Texas. NPR's Stephen Fowler reports on what's at stake.
Texas and North Carolina are large states with diverse populations that will provide an early glimpse of how voters are feeling about the current political landscape. A handful of incumbent lawmakers, like North Carolina Democratic Representative Valerie Foushee, Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn, and others, face serious primary challengers. A number of races could be competitive in the general election and help determine which party controls each chamber of Congress. Primary results and voter turnout in these states will set the stage for a midterm election where affordability and immigration enforcement are key issues. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
A Georgia jury convicted Colin Gray, the father of a teenager accused of the 2024 Appalachia High School shooting, in which 4 people died and 9 people were wounded. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Election Day is underway and voters have until 7 p.m. to cast their ballots in the party primaries. Tonight we will start to know what candidates have officially made it onto the November ballot. News 88.7's Bianca Seward is in Liberty County today covering the primaries for Texas's 9th Congressional District, which was newly redrawn last summer.
I'll be out at polls in Dayton, Texas. That's part of the newly added and more conservative part of the 9th District. Democratic Congressman Al Green represented the 9th for more than 2 decades, but the redrawn boundaries put the congressional seat in serious play come November, making this primary one to watch. 9 Republicans entered the race for the nomination. It's a complete change in effort by the GOP, given Green ran unopposed in the last 2 cycles. Meanwhile, 6 candidates are contesting the Democratic primary, indicating the party isn't going to let the seat go without a fight. Both primaries have chances of heading to runoffs. Green this time is running in the Democratic primary for the redrawn 18th Congressional District.
News 88.7's Bianca Seward reporting. We'll have live coverage of local and statewide election results tonight, starting with the Texas Standard at 7 p.m. and continuing with local coverage from Houston Public Media reporters from 8 until 10. You can also keep up with the latest online at houstonpublicmedia.org. Support for mass deportations in Houston is trending downward. That's one of the findings of a new study by the Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University. Dan Potter is the director of the Houston Population Research Center.
Flash forward to last October and November, and this is when we collected our most recent data, and not even among extremely conservatives did you still have majority support for mass deportations. And so again, after having watched these policies in action, you saw small but very important shifts in what people were looking for.
The survey found 1 out of every 7 residents in the greater Houston area say they know someone who has been detained or deported by ICE. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back to the second hour of Hello Houston. We've been moving right along.
I think we're having more fun than should be legal.
I agree.
Frank is off today just for you just joining us, but he will return eventually.
Yes, yes, he has what's been going around.
The crud people have. It's rough out there. Everybody get your flu shots. Remember those. And your COVID. Get your COVID boosters, too.
I always take my kids and they get their flu shot. I always forget to get my own. I did not have the flu, though. It was just some type of respiratory something. But, Ernie, I want to ask you real quick. You know, in our last hour, we were talking about Artemis III.
You're hateful.
We were discussing very technical terms. Ernie, what is an astroscientist?
An astroscientist, including astronomers, astrophysicists, and planetary scientists, study celestial objects and the universe's origin, evolution, and physical properties. It is a term, and it is a discipline. They rely on observation using telescopes like the Hubble and the James Webb.
Right. Ernie, while you're at it, why don't you give us the weather?
I can do that too. As an astroscientist myself, I can look out and become a climate scientist and tell you it's mostly cloudy. High of about 82. It's going to go down a little tonight to about 69. Currently, we are at 79 degrees, and even though it's cloudy, I do not see rain, at least over the loop downtown.
No, and I know that there was my daughter kept telling me, Mommy, we need to wake up early and we need to go see I think it's called the blood moon or the red moon.
Oh, yeah.
That was out. We woke up early, we went outside, all we saw was clouds. I know.
Well, but you know what? I will go back to when it was the space shuttle was going through,
going around.
and Frank kept telling us, and I missed the first time. Everyone was all excited about it. So the next time I was like, well, I'll do it. I'll go outside. I'm not going to see anything. And I actually saw it. It was a clear night, and I saw it. So, you may sometimes get disappointed when you go out for one of those, but don't give up.
No.
Next time you hear it's out there, go and check. And again, about the astroscientists, I just want to say Sean was not the only one who noticed it. Celeste mentions it. And sometimes we're talking and we got to keep going and words escape us.
Something also that's happening today is it's election day. And Ernie, you guys are going to have some special coverage tonight. Tell us about that.
We are on from 8 to 10 p.m. with live coverage here. In the past, oftentimes you get cut-ins about this. This is an important election. It's going to it could reshape the U.S. government depending on what happens in the Senate races. It's going to reshape what happens locally for us. There have been new districts put together, and so we got to see the outcomes there. Yes, it's a primary election tonight, so it's just within the parties, but it's going to be a very important thing. So we decided to give 2 hours of airtime to really dig in deep. Andrew Schneider will be joining me. Nancy Sims will be joining me. Jackie Bailey will be here. And our reporters are out in the field all over the Harris County area calling in, and even outside of Harris County. You got down in Galveston and stuff, looking at the races that matter to you, and we'll have a lot of coverage. So join us starting at 8 o'clock, both on YouTube and right here on News 88.7.
And of course, you don't have to wait till 8 p.m. We will have coverage all throughout the day during our newscast right on News 88.7. And we're going to keep you informed. You can also go to HoustonPublicMedia.org to find out more and the latest.
And they'll be keeping you up on the results as they come in all night long, but also any news that happens during the day at polling locations and things you should be aware of. The other thing to keep in mind, Celeste mentioned it earlier, harrisvotes.com. You can see where polling locations are closest to you. Remember, in Harris County at least, you can vote at any location. They will give you the actual correct ballot for where you live. It doesn't matter where you do it. Also, they'll give you time waits, so you'll know how long it is if you go.
Time
waits. Well, astroscientists need to know time waits. So I'm having a good day today, and I'm going to be on for 2 hours tonight.
But no, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of information. Very interesting time right now as we look in our primary election. But also coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to be talking about new transportation proposals that are being spearheaded by the Trump administration, which would scale back federal support with Emmett Hopkins, the transportation policy manager at the Climate and Community Institute.
And that's happening here. Happening beyond the walls of this station are the news of the day. Celeste, take us into the headlines.
President Donald Trump continues to wield significant influence in Texas politics. And this year's primary could be a major test of that power. He's endorsed more than 130 candidates ahead of Tuesday's vote, weighing in on races up and down the ballot as he works to further shape the state's Republican Party. While he has stayed out of a few high-profile contests, including the U.S. Senate race, he's been active elsewhere, even issuing endorsements late into this week. Notably, he has declined to back Houston Congressman Dan Crenshaw, the only Texas Republican in the U.S. House without Trump's support this cycle. So we want to know, how much influence should a president have in shaping local and state elections? Do you see these endorsements as leadership or interference? And here in Texas, did they affect your vote? Did you go out and are you thinking about these type endorsements? Give us a call or text and join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
In a much broader view, what I think is fascinating about these presidential endorsements, and I think it speaks to the whole concept of us being way too siloed in this world today. I guarantee you, and if folks chime in, let me know if I'm right or wrong on this. If you were to talk to a lot of folks on the far left, they would say, Trump is toxic. Trump is poison. Everyone's running from him. Yeah. They don't want to be associated with him. His regime is falling. But then if that were the case, I guarantee you there is polling in every one of these Republican candidates' offices that said, hitch your wagon to Donald Trump. It's good for your campaign. So people have to realize that maybe there's a broader perspective of what's going on out there in the electorate. Because even if you watch for the Texas Senate races we've been talking about, he did not give an endorsement to any of the three major Republican candidates. All three of them are running promos showing them with Trump, comments Trump made about them, endorsements Trump has said for them. In other moments of time. So obviously, Trump still sways great power and great power in this state. So if you're on the left and you think that Trump is at the end of his time, look at these political campaigns. They're probably telling you something different.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? And even locally bringing it into Texas, Trump has been doling out endorsements in the primary again, and he backed former state Senator Don Huffines of Dallas for comptroller and Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller for re-election. And those endorsements were especially noticeable because Abbott is backing one of Huffines' opponents for the open seat, Huffines, and the acting Kelly Hancock, and Miller's challenger, Nate Sheets, kind of fumbled through this, but stay with me. Basically, Trump has endorsed not the same people that Abbott endorsed.
And you talked with both Sid Miller and Nate Sheets.
I did.
And you would think, and one is Nate Sheets is being endorsed by Abbott, and
it's
Sid Miller
yeah.
is being endorsed by Trump. A fascinating thing, because you would think, okay, stay out of it, even for the upper guys,
Correct.
because this is still within, and this is the part that fascinates me, it's still within the Republican Party. So you want to rally behind whoever your nominee is. So this late in the game, same thing happened on the Democratic side with a former vice president who was a presidential candidate, picking a candidate to support. This close to it makes you wonder what's going on, because are they that close, these races? Because if I were that particular politician, I would have sat it out 3 more days so that the party itself could support the nominee.
Correct.
Because we already know there's going to be division in that party. Same thing on the Republican side for other. It's fascinating.
And
what's going
I
on.
think that's very interesting, because when we look at within party dynamics and plays, we rarely see Governor Abbott not in alignment with the president. So when we see that these endorsements are coming out, I really am curious how that affects the voter when you're looking at leadership alignment versus perhaps experience or, coming in as the incumbent. It's just very interesting to see the inter-party dynamics that are happening. And that's what I find so interesting about these primaries was that we really get to focus just on the party individually and see, okay, what's happening? Because you start to see those fractures, and you also start to see either the unity and the steam behind them or the lack thereof.
Well, what's also interesting is that a lot of reports of late have come out. A lot more attention has been put on it. Do celebrity endorsements matter?
Right.
Getting this TikToker, getting this pop star, getting this movie actor to endorse you, does it help? And most of the reports that I have been reading say basically not. People really don't pay attention to those. Is the same true, though, if the president does? Does, once again, Donald Trump, in his persona and sway, have a different control over the electorate? Does he, as odd as this is going to sound to say out loud, does he team build?
We're going to find out.
And do people want to follow that team, his leadership? And, of course, the other thing, having just gone to war on top of the Epstein files, there's a lot of stuff that kind of soils him right now.
Right.
And the question were some of these things, like Marjorie Taylor Greene turning against Trump because she has future aspirations in the Republican Party, and they were starting to say, maybe we need to step away from the leader and start forging our own path because eventually he won't be in charge. Well, that seems to shift back now with these primaries.
Right. And, but going back to kind of your original thought in that the celebrity endorsement, how much power does a celebrity endorsement have? I think that we almost saw what happened during a backlash of celebrity endorsements during Kamala Harris's campaign when she was here in Houston with Beyonce and Oprah. There was a lot of questioning if that was the right move. People were then questioning, did she pay Oprah and, Beyonce to be there with her. And leading up to the days, we saw President Trump at McDonald's and at he
was at a Whataburger
at a
couple
Whataburger
nights
in Corpus
ago.
Christi a couple nights. So it is a lot of those. Is it celebrity endorsements and that messaging that comes behind it? So.
We had a text that came in. One only needs to look at Trump's cabinet to see he is a lousy judge of character. I won't pay any attention to endorsements he makes. And that's Richard from Magnolia. I'd be curious to know, Richard, if you are voting in the Republican or the Democratic primary with a comment like that. Then we get another comment from YouTube. Good point, Ernie. The November results will certainly be interesting. Absolutely. And I think we live so much in the moment that I'm concerned a lot of the stuff that we are so obsessed with right now in March may not be the same things that are guiding us in November, depending on how this military action happens in Iran, what it's going to mean over the next few months, how people's reactions to it are going to be, what is going to happen there. All of this could change. Some would argue being in a war helps the current party in power. And so, maybe that is beneficial to them.
But again, 713-440-8870. What's that?
Celeste, you started something.
Oh,
here.
I've started something. Okay, I'm going to read this next text. For those of us that are not professional astroscientists, you can always check a website called timeanddate.com. All one word. There's an interactive map that will tell you what you can see in the night sky.
Have I now all my time here, I have been trying to coin the term Houston land to mean all our area. Nobody cared. I say astroscientists one time, all of a sudden, that's where we are.
Yes.
Another text came in. I first voted in the year 2000 when I was 18. I'm 44 now. That hurts already because I don't think you're doing your math right. You're not 18 in 2044 now. Am I reading that wrong? And I've never seen a vital party. We're going into an emergency alert.
Going into an emergency alert.
Party is a sing. Oh, I'm looking at the. Okay, we are back, I believe, from that. I was just saying this last, I'm reading these as they come in, some of our texts that are coming in, and Midtown Mars says, the Trump party is a sinking ship. That's exactly what I'm talking about, that there is a large group of folks out there that are believing that. But if that was truly the point, would all of these Republican candidates want to be showing themselves aligned with Donald Trump? I think that there's a nuance here that maybe the left is missing about the influence that Donald Trump still has on the right. It's a fascinating point to me.
And I just want to clarify, we did have an emergency alert system. So if you're listening, that's what that was. Also, Ernie was reading a text that said, I first voted in the year 2000 when I was 18. I'm 44 now. They did get the math right.
I got the math wrong. I was thinking they were just born in 2000 and that it just feels like 44 years have gone by.
Very astroscientist. And I have never seen a vital party raider to one in the visual like I've seen the Republican Party fold under Donald Trump permit. And that was from T.
Okay, so that's what we've been talking about. What are you thinking? Let us know. 713-440-8870. Again, if you didn't pick up on it, remember, today is Election Day. Get out there and vote. We want to see everyone have their voice be heard, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum. That is your responsibility as a member of this society.
And tag us. I really do enjoy seeing when they get the little I vote. You get your sticker tag, hellohouston.show on Instagram.
Yes.
That's where you can tag us. And we've also been getting a few emails that we received. We got a text, right? This is Jen in Clear Lake, and I think that the timing of these things is to make us all crazy. It seems like every weekend something crazy happens. I believe she was talking about what we were discussing, the strikes in Iran.
Mm-hmm. Dark Joy comments back on what we were talking about a minute ago, and they say, how can we possibly pick a candidate without knowing who Katy Perry is supporting? Quote, sarcasm. They wanted us to know it was sarcasm. Yeah, but I think that's an interesting point. I think, I remember reading somewhere they said Oprah can tell you what book to read, but she really can't influence who you vote for. I don't know how true that is. At the height of Oprah popularity, could she
I think that there was a time.
Yeah.
I think that there was a time when celebrity endorsements mattered.
Mm-hmm.
To me, they just seem tired now. I don't think that this is just my personal take on this, going out on a limb. I don't think celebrity endorsements, I understand they have a platform. I think that, yes, they should. If you have a platform, you should be able to advocate for what you think. But me, as personally, just looking at it from a strategy, political standpoint, I don't think they have the power that they used to.
Yeah. And I wonder, too, and comment on this. If you're over on YouTube, you can comment there or you can text us because we're going to move on. But I'm just curious, do you think there's a difference between a political endorsement from another political candidate, such as, or office holder, such as the president, to then a celebrity like an Oprah or Katy Perry or a Beyonce?
I do think there's a difference. Yeah. I know they're different to me.
Okay,
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk about the new transportation proposal spearheaded by the Trump administration, which would scale back federal support, with Emmett Hopkins, the transportation policy manager at the Climate and Community Institute. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
More info at schoolofthewoods.org.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear revelations from well-known actors, like Zach Galifianakis on the story behind his last name.
It's actually shortened, Terry. My real last name is Galifianakisberg. That's an exclusive for your show.
Fresh Air, bringing you some of the biggest names in American culture and some of the most difficult to pronounce. Join us.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Hilary Duff found fame on screen and in the studio as a teenager. Now she's stepping back into the spotlight as an adult with a new album.
I felt finally ready to stop comparing myself to my old successes and really just being like, whatever this is going to be, it's going to be, but I need to do it.
I'm Juana Summers. How being a wife and mother changed Duff's process on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered gets underway at 3 o'clock this afternoon on News 88.7.
These days, social media can create the illusion of connection, but don't be fooled.
Social media, it's not a meaningful part of our social diet. Like I said, it's like junk food. And again, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that it's just not good for us.
Why we need to fight the urge to socialize less, and tips for how to make a great first impression. That's next time on Think.
Think tonight at 11 on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Last year, plans for a new transportation proposal spearheaded by the Trump administration went public, and experts warn it could significantly reshape how transit is funded across the country. The administration's proposed plan would scale back federal support for public transportation and limit states' flexibility to move highway dollars into public transit projects, a shift that could affect everything from rural bus, bike lanes, systems to big city rail. To tell us more about how these plans would reshape transportation funding across the country, we welcome Emmett Hopkins, the transportation policy manager at the Climate and Community Institute, a progressive climate and economy think tank. Emmett, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you would like to join the conversation, if you have a question or a comment regarding this topic, you can call or text 713-440-8870.
You know, the administration is framing this as reform, as modernization. What problems do you see with that positioning, and are they actually solving problems with this?
Yeah, so maybe let me start with just kind of a high-level overview of what the proposals that they put forward were. So late last year, Trump's Department of Transportation put forward two proposals, which would basically gut transit for communities across both red and blue states. And so for sort of the high-level overview, the first proposal would take away every state's ability to determine for itself how to spend its federal highway dollars, specifically barring states from using those funds for transit projects. And this proposal contradicts 5 decades of bipartisan policy and congressional intent. And then the second proposal would eliminate the mass transit account from the Highway Trust Fund, effectively ending federal transit funding to the states, which would actually disproportionately hurt states with higher percentages of rural transit agencies like Texas. And so I think that it's definitely not accurate to say that cutting transportation that is some of the most important support for working people across the country could be considered modernization.
But then I have to ask, why would this administration want to limit states' abilities to shift, highway funds into public transportation projects? Have the strategy then behind that?
It is interesting. I mean, it's easy to imagine that this could have been motivated by the desire for kind of political retribution to states that voted against Trump, but actually this is not how it plays out in reality, which is quite interesting. Every state gets some transit funding from the federal government, but about 15 states get at least 1/3 of their transit funding from the federal government. And most of those states actually voted for Trump. So it's quite interesting. Rural transit agencies in red states rely especially heavily on federal funds. And according to analysis by an organization called Transportation for America, in 2024, rural transit agencies in Texas specifically reported receiving over $73 million federal funds, and this accounted for 67% of their total revenue. So if you can imagine being a transit agency or a small business, if you suddenly lost 67% of your revenue, you would need to dramatically cut your service or potentially even fold altogether.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just curious from a pencil pusher point of view, and help me with this. If this money, and correct me where I'm wrong in my understanding of this money is given to the states for highway projects, and the state then looks at that money and says, we'll use some of it for that, but we're going to use other of it for these transit projects that are ancillary, that coexist with this, but that the money is not necessarily earmarked for that. Am I missing something in my understanding of this?
Basically, there are quite a number of transportation programs that are administered by the Federal Highway Administration today. And the Federal Highway Administration was created back in the era when the country was trying to build out its interstate highway system, and effectively has evolved over time to be responding to the transportation needs that it exists today. And so within the Federal Highway Administration are housed a number of programs that Congress created with the intent to provide transportation support for a variety of uses by states that are separate from highway building, in fact. So the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, for instance, which is one of the largest programs in the Federal Highway Administration, is really intended to be a flexible transportation fund to distribute to states, to distribute to their communities for things like sidewalks, bike lanes, repaving streets, and supporting public transit. For the administration to paint this as a misuse of highway funds is really misleading, in fact. And I do want to emphasize that this is really overall would be detrimental to to working people who would be economically hurt by these transit cuts. So if the proposals passed, as I alluded to, many transit systems might go into basically a financial crisis and have to dramatically cut service. And so that could make it harder for millions of people to get to work or school, get medical care or groceries. And if working people who currently rely on transit have to instead buy a car, it could easily push their households into financial crisis. So car drivers in the United States pay an average of $1,000 per month to own and maintain a vehicle. But if you take someone who, say, uses Metro in Houston as their primary transportation, they might pay, say, $100 per month. And if suddenly the service is cut and no longer meets their needs and they buy a car, suddenly they have to find $900 a month from their household budget additional for their transportation. And they're going to have to pull that from their food budget or their housing budget or their utility budget. And it's going to be putting families into tight situations.
Would a solution to this problem simply be create another, and I say it like it would be so easy, but a separate budget line which is for transportation issues as opposed for highway infrastructure? Or am I looking at the structure once it gets to state level in an oversimplified way?
I think there certainly are solutions, but that Congress can enact. I mean, I think it's up to Congress to basically reject this gutting of transit and instead offer an increase in transit funding. And I think it could be administered in different ways in terms of how it was actually budgeted in terms of line items. But there is one bill in Congress right now that is called the Stronger Communities Through Better Transit Act that would actually allocate $20 billion to increase transit operations in both rural and urban agencies. And that's really a small price tag compared to the amount that currently goes to highways.
And so then I have to ask, how likely is Congress going to support these changes? Because what we are discussing is a proposed plan.
That's right. And there are committees in Congress currently in negotiations for the reauthorization of the Federal Surface Transportation Act or bill, which is reauthorized every 5 to 6 years. Indications so far have said that some of the Republican leaders on the committees that are most relevant are not responding favorably to these proposals, which is a good sign. And I think historically we've seen over past decades Republican and Democratic administrations as well as Congress who have supported public transit, and it's only been in more recent history, more recent decades, that Republicans seem to have become a bit more hostile towards transit. But I think there's still hope that there can be strong supporters on both sides of the aisle.
And so then I wonder about the major rail or bus projects that are already in the pipeline. Could this change, delay them, cancel them completely? What happens about projects that are already, again, in the pipeline?
Yeah, so that kind of brings us to the part of the proposal that would be restricting states' abilities for flexibility of those federal highway dollars. And it is true that a lot of states do have transit projects underway with anticipated funding that could be cut, and it could basically leave those transportation projects in the lurch and put states in a difficult position to have to decide whether to carve out more funding from their own state budgets to be able to finish those projects.
And looking at kind of the sentiment behind this, as you were mentioning, this is usually something that, it gets support from both sides of the aisle. Is there any impact when we look at climate goals and emission reductions that are playing within this?
Absolutely. Our transportation sector in the U.S. is the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, and private car travel is the primary source of those emissions. And so being able to both basically, if we gut transit in the country, we're going to see a shifting of everyone or many of the people who rely on transit currently may have to rely on private vehicles to get around, which would be an increase in emissions. And then what we need to see is actually the opposite, is an infusion of greater funding to really bring our transit systems to the next level so that more people feel that those are good options for them and can choose to leave their car at home more often if they choose to. And really what we see in polling is nationally is that people want more transportation options, not less. We see that a majority of people who rely on driving a car for their primary transportation feel like they have no other choice than to drive and would like to have other options.
Right.
Emmett, we got a text in here. I'm curious your reaction to it. On the motive behind this transportation funding change, the real motive is that if people are taking public transit, they don't need cars, and the car industry lobbyists see that as a negative. Additionally, there are companies out there who get funded billions of dollars a year to construct highways, and those people would lose out on projects, so everything comes back to money.
There certainly are a lot of corporate interests in the highway building operations, and so the texter is absolutely right on that front. One interesting thing that we found in doing jobs modeling, if we look at shifting more funding towards transit, we actually see increases in jobs overall, and even for the construction industry as compared to a more the traditional highway-centered approach to transportation. So I think there's definitely is a wealthy, moneyed corporate interest behind a lot of these decisions.
We got another text here. It says, there is no more new money in federal budgets. If we want more Fed money for public transit, then our elected officials need to make the tough choices to prioritize finite resources. Your reaction to that?
That's absolutely right. And, one of the things that we can do immediately to be able to reprioritize our finite assets is to stop the reckless military escapades that are ongoing, and we could certainly have more than enough to build excellent transportation systems.
So, Emmett, when we're looking at this proposed plan, when would it essentially be voted on, moved forward, stalled? And I'm curious, if it did move forward, when would Americans start to really feel the impact of something like this?
Yeah, so the process of Congress negotiating the renewal of the surface transportation bill will be ongoing this year, and it's hard to say exactly when a vote might take place. It could be later this year. It could delay into the following year, and the cuts, if cuts were made to transit, people would likely see service cuts very quickly, because a lot of these transit agencies are already having to deal with tight budgets, and so it could be, I would say, as early as next year that transit really plummets if this were enacted.
There is an argument here in this area that folks aren't taking public transportation at the rate at which we pay to build it and have it available. It's that a lot of money goes into it and very few people are using it. How is that idea behind it, theory, either correct or incorrect?
Well, one thing that people forget about when they make those arguments is how much the federal government actually supports all of the infrastructure required to drive a car. We have a massive amount of funding that goes into building roads, that goes into securing oil, and other factors that make it easy for people to, in many cases, to get in their car and go somewhere. And the other thing that I would mention is that, if transit goes away, it's not just going to affect the people who ride transit today. It's going to affect everybody broadly, because it will have a negative impact on the economy. And that's because transit is just a big part of the engine that moves the economy in this country. So the cuts would be felt intensely by small businesses, medical facilities, schools, grocery stores, all of whom rely on this functioning transportation system that we have, which includes public transit, and to move goods and customers and employees smoothly. And so you can imagine gridlock in city centers, slow sales on main streets. And so in a sense, cutting transit means kneecapping the economy, and that affects everybody.
Good points there. If people want to learn more about this policy and this this proposal, where should they go to get educated, would you say?
Yeah, you can always come over to look at our website at climateandcommunity.org. And I would also suggest taking a look at the report that was put out by the organization called Transportation for America, which put out on their website a piece called Rural and Red State Pain: Four Notable Impacts of Trump's Unprecedented Transit Cuts.
Emmett Hopkins is the Transportation Policy Manager at the Climate and Community Institute. Emmett, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Coming up, how a local nonprofit has been affected by funding cuts to SNAP. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Texas Southern University brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Today is Election Day. I'm Ernie Manus. Join me along with politics and government reporter Andrew Schneider for live special coverage with results from local and statewide primary elections. We'll keep you updated on the highly contested Texas Senate race between Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, as well as local contests like the battle for the District 18 congressional seat and more. Join us for results and analysis after the polls close. Special coverage begins tonight at 8 p.m. on News 88.7 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
For months, the Department of Homeland Security has been plagued by allegations of chaos. Meanwhile, the funding fight over DHS and a partial government shutdown continues. Now, U.S. and Israeli airstrikes in Iran over the weekend are adding pressure to reach a funding agreement for the agency amid national security concerns. What's happening at DHS? We check in next time on 1A.
1A at 2 p.m. this afternoon here on News 88.7.
You want to buy or sell a home, how and where it is listed really matter.
This fight for listings is really at the heart of the real estate market, and it could determine, what kind of market do we have?
I'm Kai Rizdal, Zillow, Compass Realty, and Homes for Sale. That is next time on Marketplace.
Marketplace after all things considered at 6:30 on News 88.7. And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manus and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Under new SNAP work requirements, adults aged 18 to 64 without dependent children must work 80 hours a month to maintain their eligibility for benefits. Creating challenges for many low-income families, vulnerable communities, and local charities working to help these groups. Alexander Jewish Family Services, JFS, is a Houston-based social service organization that works to not only transform, but to also empower the lives of individuals, families, and communities of all faiths and backgrounds by providing a range of services, including mental health counseling, education, and emergency food assistance, to name but a few. To tell us more about the organization and how the SNAP cuts have affected their work, we are joined by Morgan. Morgan, how do you say your last name? I don't want to say it wrong.
It's Zeringue. So like meringue with a Z.
Zeringue is here. Morgan Zeringue, Director of Program Services at Alexander JFS. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I want to dig into all that you folks do, and it's a wonderful organization. We're lucky to have you functioning in our community. But I want to start off with the SNAP program and what this means. I'm sure there's a lot of folks that listen to this and say, well, 80 hours a month, they're making an effort, they're working, that's good. And so then they get rewarded with this benefit help. How are those folks misunderstanding the situation?
Yeah, I think it's a complex situation for a lot of different reasons. Individuals may have unique challenges or reasons why they're not able to meet those volunteer requirements or work requirements, mental health challenges, physical challenges. And so the changes really impact folks in a lot of different ways. And also, just on a family note, there's a lot of individuals that are equally receiving less funds, less support, when we all see around us how expensive and inflation and how just general basic needs costs just continue to rise.
So if in fact these that folks are having to abide by this, what happens to the folks who, like you just laid out a list of folks who actually can't perform the 80 hours of service required a month? What is their alternative then for food? It seems as though that's one of the groups that needs this benefit because they're unable to do this.
Absolutely. There are local workforce programs through agencies like TWC. We also have a SNAP ENT program that will help people go through training or go through work trial programs. And so they don't lose their benefits while they're trying out some different areas. And then the second set of that is many rely on the local food pantries. And so, great agencies like Houston Food Bank that offer different markets and food pantry options. There's a lot of local service vendors that are providing food pantry, and there's been a huge increase in food pantry need over the last couple months.
So then I'm curious, going back to the 80 hours, consistently documenting 80 hours, what happens if somebody is has unstable work schedules or not able to get that? I know that you and Ernie were mentioning it. It's people that are falling through the cracks. How are you all able to help those?
Yeah, for sure. So we have wraparound coaching and case management services. And so for us as an agency, what we try to do is we try to get ahead of some of those things, get more in tune with what the client requirements are. And we may meet with clients weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on their schedule, to just ensure they're meeting those requirements, ensure they understand their benefits and what's at risk. And so just kind of being an advocate and a coach to coach them through what those different requirements are, and also help them do some resource navigation. Houston is huge, which means these different resources can be spread all over town. So our case managers work really close with them to make sure they understand what resources are available, where they're located. They may help them make an appointment, but really work hand in hand with them to make sure they're helping them access those resources that are available.
Are you seeing any uptick in first-time clients coming to you all because of some of these funding cuts?
Yeah, absolutely. We receive a lot of new clients. We are a partner with the United Way 211 helpline, where people can call in and get resources. And so we are a 211 helpline member. So we are consistently getting new clients who may need assistance with applying for benefits or navigating their benefits, but also just struggling with food insecurity and food pantry needs as a whole.
Do me a favor and take a step back, widen out the picture. I don't think folks are well aware of everything you folks do at Alexander JFS. And I think people hear Jewish Family Services, and even as we read in the introduction, it's not just for the Jewish community. You folks have a huge impact in this whole area. So talk a little bit about the services people turn to you for and how people can find these services.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we're open to the entire community. We serve folks of all faith backgrounds. Our mission, of course, is guided by Jewish values, but we are fully open to the community and have so many phenomenal services. So in addition to coaching and case management, which I talked a little bit about, we also have a career and employment center. Our career and employment center helps individuals go through job training. We may be able to assist with funding for certification programs. and we help people really build economic resilience, resume writing, mock interviewing skills. We also offer behavioral and mental health services. So we offer counseling services. We accept all insurances, including Medicaid, CHIP, and we also have a sliding scale fee for folks who maybe can't afford counseling at the full scale price. We have a phenomenal disability and inclusion services. So we just finished out our Real Abilities, which is a amazing partnership with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, where we do a month-wide film and arts festival around advocacy and education for the disability population.
Morgan, don't leave out music, because we have the Real Music concert that I get to MC.
Amazing.
Don't forget about that. Continue. I didn't mean to cut
Amazing.
you
We
off.
actually had our highest attendance this year across all of our programs. It's really phenomenal. And I have to say, when we tell people about it and they go to one event, they're hooked. So real music, real art, real education, real films, they're all phenomenal and really, I think, open the eyes to the disability community. If you're not already in that life, in that world, it really opens a perspective for a lot of people.
Right. Morgan, going back and looking at, the SNAP work requirements and this new policy, do you believe that this policy really reflects the realities of the clients that you serve, of the low-wage work in Houston?
I think the clients that we serve are diverse, and every situation is unique. And I think the reality is that people need support. We all need support, no matter what it is. And I think we have to just treat each individual unique situation for what it is and provide them that guidance and support in the ways that they need it. We know that things will always evolve. The world will continue to evolve. But I think serving our most vulnerable people it's the work we're called to do. And it is just the core of the work that we do here.
And to really, really understand for our listeners, explain to if someone loses that SNAP benefit, how quickly does that impact their stability? I mean, when you're looking at rent, utilities, childcare.
I mean, for a big percentage of the clients we serve, they are very much living paycheck to paycheck. And so a loss of food access absolutely taps into other areas. And so one of the core services that we provide is financial wellness and education. And so we hope that we can get ahead of that. And if they do lose their benefits, help them create a new budget that works for them, provide some support where we can. We have some direct financial assistance. We also have some a small food pantry. And so the sooner that we can get in and apply some of those financial literacy and wellness skills with our clients, we hope that we can get ahead of causing, the kind of the what comes after that.
And unfortunately, oftentimes the financial troubles do follow folks into their senior years. And you folks do a lot with seniors in helping them, not just with food, but with other resources.
Yeah, absolutely. We offer a plethora of services to senior adults, anything from helping them apply for benefits for the first time. Again, going back to that coaching, we do in-home safety assessments where we can go in their home, help make some recommendations as to what would make their home a little safer. And then also guidance in if they're needing to transition out of their home and are looking for more affordable, living situations, we help provide some guidance there. We have an amazing volunteer and chaplaincy program where we go into the hospitals and provide supports for folks and have friendly volunteers that make calls or do weekly check-ins for seniors who are struggling with isolation and just feeling alone in really challenging times.
Morgan, you mentioned the mental health services that you provide. I would imagine that it's very cyclical in that if somebody is, trying to get on their feet, trying to move forward, all of a sudden they feel like they're getting hit again, by potentially losing their SNAP benefits. How does it all work together to be a very holistic approach?
Yeah, for sure. We have a really phenomenal team that works closely together, but we also have a very simplified intake process. So a client can go in to our website, alexanderjfs.org. They can fill out an intake, and they only have to fill out one intake, and they can basically tell us what are their top 3 or 4 services that they're most interested in. And then our intake team will help guide us through them through that process. So like you said, someone may come in and think, oh, I only need case management, but then pretty quickly we're able to identify there's a counseling need or there's a financial assistance need. We're able to work closely with our team and make sure our client really gets those holistic services, and we can kind of wrap all the additional services that they may need into one process for them.
Morgan Zeringue is the Director of Program Services at the Houston-based social services organization Alexander JFS. Morgan, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to remind you tonight there will be special election coverage starting at 8 p.m.
Right here on News 88.7 and also on our YouTube channel.
And we want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston today. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. We'll also talk with Texas Monthly's Michael Hardy about the career of Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. This is News 88.7. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.